A relentless echo filled the vast marble halls of the Billionaire Sheikh's palace. 11 lawyers had failed him, each one outmaneuvered by a web of deceit so tangled it threatened to topple his empire. His fist slammed the colossal mahogany table. The kingdom that gleamed with gold and power was now trembling. Yet, amidst this storm, an unexpected hope flickered quietly in the shadows. The palace stood like a fortress, kissed by the desert sun, its golden spires piercing the endless blue sky. Silk tapestries embroidered with intricate patterns hung from towering archways, bathing the vast rooms in a warm, amber glow. The scent of rare frankincense curled through the air, mingling with the subtle perfume of jasmine gardens beyond the gilded windows. Every step echoed softly against the polished marble floors, a symphony of power and opulence. At the heart of this grandeur, the Billionaire Sheikh sat rigid, the weight of empire pressing down on his sharp shoulders. His dark eyes, usually cold storms, flickered now with frustration and a hidden storm of fear. Years of ruthless control could not bend the stubborn threads of this legal nightmare. His jaw clenched as the thought of failure gnawed at his pride. Nearby, almost invisible in the muted light, his maid moved quietly, a slender figure draped in simple white linen, her gaze calm but piercing. No one expected much from her, a mere servant in the palace hierarchy, silent and unassuming. But beneath her soft exterior hid a mind as keen as the fine edge of a dagger. She had watched the flurry of paper, the endless meetings, the exhausted lawyers drifting away defeated, noting the overlooked details no one dared to see. Tonight was different. The Sheikh, desperate and stripped of his usual arrogance, had finally spoken a name few inside the marble walls dared to utter. Hers. 11 lawyers couldn't find the fault, he said with biting skepticism. What makes you think you can? Her eyes met his without hesitation, steady and confident, swallowing the disdain in the room. Sometimes the quietest whisper reveals the loudest truth, she answered softly. The room held its breath. The stakes were more than just the empire. They were the Sheikh's legacy. As she traced her fingers over the mountain of legal documents, a subtle smile appeared, almost invisible. The scent of old parchment, dust, and time sharpened her senses. Minutes ticked by in deadly silence until her fingers stopped, hovering over a line buried deep within the contracts, a clause so small, so cleverly hidden, it had slipped past the watchful eyes of the seasoned lawyers. "Here," she whispered, voice barely breaking the hushed room. "This changes everything." The Sheikh leaned in, disbelief etching across his face. The truth unraveling before him was simple, yet game-changing, a loophole so decisive it could obliterate the opposition's entire fortress of claims. His empire's fall now seemed averted by the very maid who should have remained invisible. For the first time, admiration softened his stare, mingling shock with a dawning respect that threatened to dismantle walls long built around his heart. Could she truly be the key to salvation? Or was this just the beginning of a far more complicated game? The palace, once filled with tension, now pulsed with possibility. What dominion would this alliance forge? What secrets would unravel next? Before the next secret of this empire unfolds, make sure you're part of our caravan of stories. Many destinies are still to be written, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Leave your like if the heart of this sheikh has already intrigued you. Tell me in the comments, which city are you following this saga from, and what twist do you think is coming next? Your passion for these dramas is what inspires us to continue. Thank you for being with us. A luz tenue, das velas tremeluziu belas paredes de mármore, projetando sombras que dançavam silenciosas ao ritmo de vento quente. Do deserto que sussurrava pelas janelas entreabertas do palácio. No salão principal, o ar parecia carregado, não apenas pelo aroma inconfundível do almíscar e da mirra, mas pelo peso esmagador das descobertas recentes. O governante de um império vasto e implacável, o Billionaire Sheikh, permanecia imóvel, seus olhos absorvendo cada palavra da jovem que ousava contrariar o silêncio das derrotas anteriores. Ela era a última esperança num labirinto de intrigas jurídicas, uma figura que ninguém posicionava no tabuleiro do poder. A leveza de seu gesto ao apontar o documento parecia contradizer a tempestade interior que a dominava. Sabia que aqueles poucos centímetros de tinta podiam arruinar alianças, massacrar ambições e virar o jogo para sempre. E mesmo com seus passos discretos e fala calma, havia uma chama obstinada brilhando em seu olhar. Uma coragem alimentada por anos assistindo, aprendendo e esperando por sua oportunidade. O sheik manteve o olhar firme sobre ela. A frieza habitual dava lugar a uma curiosidade inquieta, como um leão que percebe o cheiro de sangue fresco depois de dias à caça sem sucesso. "Explain it again," he demanded, voice low yet commanding, as the flickering candlelight caught the sharp angles of his face. Her fingers traced the ancient words delicately, almost reverently. "This clause," she whispered. "It's a condition voiding any claims made without a notarized witness from the tribe council. 11 lawyers overlooked it because they assumed the signed contracts were flawless. But the opposition's papers lack this essential validation. Without it, their entire legal challenge collapses." The room fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the distant clinking of fine china being set in the adjoining hall. The weight of her statement hung heavier than any decree ever spoken in these golden corridors. For the first time in many moons, the realm's ruler felt hope seep cautiously through the cracks in his armor. "You've changed this game," he admitted, exhaling sharply as the tension began to loosen its grasp. She allowed herself a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Sometimes the truth hides in places no one bothers to look. The sheikh's gaze softened, the hardness in his eyes melting into something almost vulnerable. He saw not the servant, but the brilliance beneath, a mind sharpened by adversity and silence, a kindred warrior standing beside him in an unanticipated alliance. Yet this newfound camaraderie thrilled just as much as it. Unsettled the seasoned court around them, whispers fluttered like restless moths, doubting the wisdom of entrusting a palace's fate to one who belonged to its shadows. He rose abruptly, the silk of his thob whispering secrets as he paced toward one of the towering windows, gazing out over the endless sands stretched under a bleeding sunset. Beyond the gilded borders of his dominion, threats lurked, rivals scheming in shadowed corners, betrayals whispered behind fan screens, and in his heart a deeper, more insidious fear. What if this secret, this loophole, was merely the first thread in a tapestry of deception yet unknown? His hand clenched the heavy curtain, knuckles paling like the desert moon. Behind him, the maid stepped forward quietly, her voice steady but low. "There's more," she said cautiously. "Something I discovered while reviewing the estate's ledgers last night. A transfer of funds. Large sums routed through a front company overseas. It's linked to the same faction challenging your rule." The Sheikh's eyes narrowed, icy resolve igniting anew. "Show me." She unfurled another parchment. Lines of figures and names sprawled beneath intricate stamps and seals. Her finger hovered over a name hidden amongst innocuous entries. A name the Sheikh recognized all too well. That name. "It shouldn't be there," he muttered, disbelief mixing with suspicion. "Someone inside is betraying you," she said, voice taut as the strings of a bow. "And it's closer than you think." The room felt suddenly smaller, the walls closing in with the weight of conspiracy. A cold rush of adrenaline flooded the Sheikh's veins, awakening instincts tempered by years of tactical mastery. He turned sharply to face the maid, eyes burning with a mix of gratitude and an unspoken question. Could she be trusted beyond this moment? Was her loyalty as unwavering as the desert sun was relentless? A tension so thick it could be carved like marble gripped them both. Then, like a pulse beneath the skin, an unuttered bond forged itself in silence. Two unlikely allies, poised at the edge of a storm that threatened to consume their world. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to an almost intimate murmur. "Meet me tonight, in the Hall of Whispers. No one can know. This war must be fought in shadows." Her nod was barely perceptible, but it carried the weight of a solemn vow. As she retreated into the park, flickering gaps of light and shade, the Sheikh's mind raced. This alliance held promise, but also danger. Nothing in his life had prepared him for trusting a ghost within his own palace. Outside, the desert wind wailed like a distant lament, as if mourning the innocence lost to kingdoms built on sand and secrets. And in that moment, beneath the towering spires and vast skies, the billionaire sheikh understood that his empire was no longer just threatened by law and politics, but by truths hidden in the very fabric of those he thought closest. A soft creak echoed from the shadows beyond the entrance. A presence, watching, waiting. The game was far from over, and the most dangerous move was yet to come. The candlelight flickered as the vast hall held its breath, shadows lengthening and retreating like secrets hiding from the desert moon. The billionaire sheikh remained poised yet restless, his collar slightly undone, a rare gesture betraying the turmoil within. The maid, her eyes steady and unwavering, unfurled the second parchment with grace born of necessity rather than privilege. Her finger traced a path through columns of numbers and names. each one a silent conspirator in the treachery that threatened to cannibalize the empire. The name that lingered beneath her touch was one he knew intimately, a betrayal etched into flesh and blood. Why would he do this? The Sheikh's voice was barely a whisper, soaked in disbelief and rage. The air thickened, the scent of frankincense, mingling with tension so palpable it sealed the room itself. "Power," she replied evenly, voice low but edged with warning. "And fear. He knows what's at stake. He's playing a dangerous gamble." For a heartbeat, the eternity of his empire felt fragile, a glass teetering on the edge of a marble shelf, ready to shatter into 1,000 irreparable shards. The maid's gaze lifted, meeting his, a silent oath forged from adversity and unspoken truths. "We don't have much time. This betrayal runs deeper than money. There are whispers of a plan to undermine your rule publicly, to turn your allies against you." The Sheikh's eyes darkened, a tempest of calculation stirring beneath the surface. A lifetime of command had taught him to see enemies in every shadow. Yet this was not the usual battlefield. "Tell me everything," he commanded, voice now a sharpened blade, slicing through the fog of uncertainty. She spoke quickly but precisely, revealing fragments of intercepted messages, coded communications hidden beneath layers of loyalty and deceit. Names of trusted confidants twisted by envy, orders for sabotage cloaked in ceremonial gifts. The words spilled like poison, yet in them lay the sliver of hope he desperately needed. A slow smile curved the maid's lips, tempered with fatigue, but fierce with determination. "We can fight this, but only if we act silently, swiftly, and together." The Sheikh nodded, a rare softness washing over his features. The harsh countenance softened as he recognized that salvation might come not from power or wealth, but from a fragile alliance born beneath the marble pillars that echoed history's triumphs and failures. "I will trust you," he said quietly, "but this alliance must remain unseen. No one can suspect." Her brow furrowed, but the fierce light in her eyes was unmistakable. A warrior's resolve, ready to challenge fate itself. Night had deepened. The moon, the silver sentinel over the endless desert, cast shadows that danced alongside whispered secrets. In the Hall of Whispers, they met as agreed. Words few, gestures loaded with meaning. Neither could afford weakness. The Sheikh's voice broke the silence, rough but sincere. "You're more than a servant. You've proven that tonight. Tell me, do you trust me?" She studied him, the weight of the empire pressing not just on his shoulders, but on his soul. "I trust the man who's willing to see beyond tradition, who fights not just for power, but for justice." For a moment, silence enveloped them like a fragile veil. Then a tremor in the air, electric and unyielding, as his hand reached out, fingers brushing lightly against hers. It was a touch laden with promises unspoken, and a fragile hope blooming amidst the ruin. Yet even as that fragile bridge formed, footsteps echoed faintly in the corridor outside, deliberate, guarded. Eyes darkened behind half-closed doors, and lips curled into whispered smiles, poisoned with intent. The palace was not just a home of splendor, but a cage woven with dangers as intricate as its golden mosaics. Suddenly, a chilling whisper seeped through the crack of a doorway. The voice, low, careful, and cold. "The game isn't over, Sheikh. You've won a battle, but the war belongs to those who move unseen." The Sheikh's gaze snapped toward the shadow, raw instincts flaring. The maid tightened her grip on his sleeve, eyes wide but unafraid. He smiled, a dangerous curve of lips edged with steel and sudden clarity. "Then let them come. We will be ready." Outside the walls, the desert wind howled, a mournful song weaving through dunes and secrets. Inside, two unlikely allies stood at the precipice of an empire's rebirth or ruin. But beneath the surface, in a chamber cloaked by shadows and silence, a third figure watched with a knowing smile, a smile heavy with betrayal. And before the dawn, the silent move was already cast. The night deepened, and the vast hall of whispers lay shrouded in shadows, as the billionaire sheikh and the maid sat face to face beneath the soaring arches. Flickering candlelight cast trembling patterns on the polished marble floor, mirroring the tension wrapped tightly around their souls. The air was thick, heavy, with the volatile blend of danger and fragile trust. The sheikh, usually a mountain of unyielding confidence, now appeared worn, his dark eyes revealing a rare glimmer of vulnerability as he gazed at the slender figure beside him. Her calm defiance was unexpected, a beacon amid the shrouded uncertainties threatening to unravel his empire. "You've uncovered the betrayal that threatens to consume everything," he said, his voice low, edged with a brittle mix of gratitude and disbelief. "And yet, I know this is only the surface. You said the plan runs deeper." She nodded, her fingers lightly brushing the worn parchment, as though drawing strength from its fragile fibers. "The conspiracy extends beyond the ledgers and contracts. There are whispers among the council, sinister conversations overheard, secret meetings held behind closed doors. Your allies, some of them are turning into shadows." His jaw tensed, the room seeming to grow colder despite the desert's fading warmth outside. The scent of jasmine from the palace gardens mingled with the faint trace of musk lingering in the air. Yet the majesty of the moment was lost beneath the weight of impending treachery. "They believe your power can be broken. They seek to fracture the alliances built by blood and gold," she added, voice barely above a whisper, but every word hit with the force of a desert gale. He leaned forward, the silk of his thob whispering secrets as his fingers drummed thoughtfully on the table's gleaming surface. "We must isolate the traitors before their poison spreads." Her dark eyes met his. "It will not be easy. They have influence in places you wouldn't expect. Trusted confidants, advisors who wear loyalty like a mask. We need to act carefully, with precision." The sheikh's gaze flickered to the grand windows, the endless desert sands stretching toward a horizon veiled in moonlight. He was a ruler accustomed to command, yet the fragility of his position unsettled even his steely heart. "Then we create a new order," he declared, voice steady now, brimming with the fire of a man reclaiming his domain. "One where loyalty is earned through truth, not titles." She allowed herself a faint smile, the kind that refuse to be extinguished by shadows or threats. Together, we can dismantle the web they've spun and reveal who hides behind the gilded curtains. Minutes passed in a heavy silence, each of them wrapped in thoughts tangled with uncertainty and hope. The maid glanced toward the edges of the hall, where shadows lengthened, as if aware that eyes unseen lingered just beyond the flickering glow. Suddenly, a delicate sound pierced the stillness. A single soft footstep far down the corridor. The Sheikh's head snapped toward the noise. Muscles coiled like a panther's ready to strike. "Did you hear that?" he murmured, his voice barely audible but fraught with threat. She nodded, rising slowly, her gaze sharp and vigilant. We are no longer alone. The hall's vastness became a cage of whispered secrets. The oppressive silence broke with the stifled gasp of a nearby guard, whose shadow flickered against the marble pillars. The maid's hand slid naturally toward the hidden dagger concealed beneath her linen, a subtle grace born from years of necessity. From the darkness emerged a figure cloaked in midnight, a messenger whose presence bespoke peril. His eyes flickered with a dangerous glint as he approached the throne's foot, voice low and venomous. "The game you think you control unravels faster than sand through your fingers, Sheikh," he sneered. "Your precious alliance will crumble. The empire you cling to will be but ashes." A ripple of cold fire coursed through the Sheikh's veins. The challenge was no longer whispered in shadows. It screamed in the face of his fate. He rose, towering and resolute, the opulence of his royal garb accentuating the unshakable power that refused to submit. If ashes are all they can deliver, I will build a kingdom from the dust, he declared, eyes dark as a desert storm. The intruder hesitated, the certainty in the Sheikh's voice unsettling. Before he could speak further, the maid stepped forward, a silent tempest of danger and determination. "You underestimate us." Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. "This betrayal will end tonight, before it consumes what remains." The messenger faltered, a flicker of doubt crossing his features as the powerful duo closed ranks. Yet in the depths of the palace, beyond the reach of candlelight and whispered threats, unseen forces moved with calculated purpose. The Sheikh's fingers brushed the edge of the dagger at the maid's side, a shared unspoken vow to protect their fragile alliance against all enemies, seen and unseen. He studied her closely, more than a servant, a partner in war and survival. Their eyes locked, an unspoken understanding rippling between them, binding their destinies, like threads wound tight around golden pillars. Outside, the desert moon bathed the world in pale light, silent witness to the silent war raging within the palace walls. Then, beyond the heavy drapes, a shadow shifted with deliberate slowness. A silken veil slipped off a figure cloaked in secrecy, lips curling into a knowing, cruel smile. A whispered breath escaped, cold, suffocating. The game was far from over, and the first move of the ultimate betrayal had just been made. The heavy curtains swayed slightly as a cold draft slipped through the ornate window frames, carrying the desert's restless breath into the heart of the palace. The room, once bathed in flickering candlelight, now seemed suffused with a spectral chill that mirrored the tension crackling between the billionaire sheikh and the maid. He stood tall, a silhouette carved from shadow and silk, watching her with eyes sharp as daggers, yet softened by something unspoken. The parchment she'd revealed lay between them, like a burden neither dared touch, the names and numbers scribbled in silent accusation. "Every thread we pull tightens the noose," the sheikh murmured, his voice a low rumble vibrating with restraint and fury. But the question remains, who wove this web so intricately? Who dares undermine their own blood? Her gaze did not flinch. "It is always closer than we expect," she answered, a calmness enfolding her words like a shield. "I have seen the glances, the hushed conversations. Even the Grand Vizier, the king's most trusted shadow, is not beyond suspicion." A bitter laugh escaped him, steeped in disbelief. "The very man I trusted to guard my secrets?" "Yes," she said softly, "but this isn't betrayal born of greed alone. It's fear. Fear of a future where your hold weakens, where new powers arise from ashes. They seek to rewrite the rules behind your back." His fist clenched, nails biting into the plush velvet of his thob. The marble beneath his feet reflected the storm raging inside him. Relentless, unyielding, devastating. Outside, the desert stars bristled cold and distant, indifferent to human schemes and silent wars. The maid stepped closer, the faint rustle of her linen whispering like silk promises across the stone floor. Her dark eyes held the fire of one who had nothing left to lose, and everything to protect. "We must move quickly," she urged, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The palace is a labyrinth of secrets. The traitors have eyes everywhere. Guards, servants, advisors. Trust no one beyond this room." He fell silent, absorbing the weight of her conviction. For a lifetime, he had ruled by command and fear. But now, the landscape shifted beneath his feet. His empire was a fragile constellation on the verge of collapse. And his greatest ally had been hidden in plain sight. "Then we play their game," he declared, stepping back to the vast window that framed the endless dunes bathed in moonlight. His reflection shimmered in the glass, a ruler on the precipice of ruin or redemption. Suddenly, a faint sound pierced the stillness, the subtle scuff of footsteps, deliberate and measured, echoing softly down the marble corridor. His body tensed instantly, every muscle primed. "They approach," he said, turning. His voice was steel. "Prepare yourself." The maid's hand brushed against the hidden dagger at her side, fingers curling around the cool handle with instinctive ease. Her eyes flared, embers ignited by the gravity of what was to come. Together they moved into the shadows, melding with the marble pillars and whispered darkness. The vast hall of whispers seemed to hold its breath, its ornate arches transformed into sentinels, guarding a fragile alliance forged beneath threat. From the depths emerged a figure cloaked in midnight, gait smooth and arrogant. The messenger's eyes glinted with venom as he stepped into the faint circle of candlelight. Words travel fast in this city of snakes, he said, voice dripping with scorn. Do you truly believe that a humble maid can turn the tides against those who lurk beneath your throne, Sheikh? The Sheikh's dark eyes never wavered. Underestimate us at your peril, he replied, a cold smile tracing his lips. This alliance, born of necessity and truth, will not falter. A cruel grin twisted the intruder's face. Then you've doomed yourself. In an instant, the candlelight flickered violently as a sudden gust swept through the chamber, shadows dancing wildly along the walls. The maid stepped forward, dignity and defiance intertwined in every step. This empire is my home, and its echoes are etched within me. Your lies will unravel, she said, voice firm and unwavering. For a moment, time seemed to suspend itself. Two forces, poised on the edge of a blade, each waiting for the other to make the fatal move. But before the messenger could retaliate, a distant crash shattered the fragile stillness. The sound of a massive door thrown open with brutal force. All eyes snapped toward the source, breath caught, and hearts pounding as a new silhouette appeared in the threshold. The figure was cloaked in regal black, embroidered with threads of gold, and adorned with jewels that caught the candlelight like a constellation. His presence was a storm contained, power radiating from every calculated movement. Enough games, the newcomer said, his voice a thunderclap, breaking the tenuous truce. Your secret alliances and paltry schemes are done. Tonight, the Empire decides who holds the throne. The Sheikh's gaze locked on the intruder, recognition flickering with cold rage. This was no mere challenger. It was a reckoning cloaked in familial blood. Fingers tightened around her dagger, a silent promise etched within the tremble of her grasp. You stand on the edge of ruin, the Sheikh said, his voice a deadly calm. But I have not yet fallen. The tension coiled tighter, every breath a gamble, every heartbeat a drumbeat heralding the storm. Outside, the desert wind wailed like a wounded beast, a mournful anthem for the fate about to be sealed within these gilded walls. In that suspended moment, beneath the towering arches and the cold, indifferent stars, the billionaire sheikh understood this truth with brutal clarity. The greatest betrayal was not in the shadows or the whispered conspiracies, but in the bloodline that bound them all. And, as the chandelier's crystals quivered with approaching upheaval, the final phrase cut through the silence like a blade. This empire's true war begins now. The newcomer's presence filled the vast chamber like a thunderclap, shattering fragile truce. The billionaire sheikh's eyes narrowed, dark as storm clouds ready to break, as the gilded figure stepped forward with slow, deliberate purpose. The heavy silence that clung to the palace walls seemed to crack, the weight of unspoken history pressing down like unseen sands upon their shoulders. You dare challenge the throne with shadows of betrayal? The intruder's voice was cold, a blade veiled in silk, but underneath lay a snarling edge of family ties frayed by ambition and envy. The sheikh's hand tightened around the smooth curve of the marble railing. His breath was steady but electric, every heartbeat a drum calling him to war. The woman at his side, quiet yet unyielding, mirrored his resolve. Her eyes searched his face briefly, a flicker of worry swimming beneath fierce loyalty, before she slid her hand to the hidden dagger beneath her linen. "I have not yet fallen," he said, voice low but unbreakable, "and this empire will not bend to whispers of treason." Behind him, the walls seemed to pulse with the wild heat of the desert night, the scent of jasmine mingling with musk, holding the ancient palace in a tight embrace. The newcomer's gaze sharpened, a cruel smile pulling at the corners of his lips. "Then prepare yourself for what lies beyond blood and gold. The throne is no sanctuary. It is a battlefield where only the ruthless survive." A flicker of movement caught the Sheikh's eye, a faint shadow slipping behind an ornate pillar, vanishing before it could be identified. The air thickened, charged with a silent warning. The maid stepped forward, her voice calm but unwavering. "We know the stakes. The traitors have eyes everywhere, their claws sunk deep into the heart of your alliance." The Sheikh turned fully, dark eyes locking with hers. In that moment, the great divide between ruler and servant dissolved, replaced by a shared understanding born from trust forged in fire. "Then we strike before their venom spreads," he declared, voice ringing with the authority that once commanded nations. "But this duel will not be won with swords alone." Her lips curved into a hint of a smile, shadowed but fierce. "We use their own secrets against them. The palace is full of whispers, waiting to be unraveled." The intruder's laugh was sharp, a grenade tossed into the fragile calm. "You think your silent conspiracies can withstand the storm? You underestimate the power of those who sit in the shadows." The Sheikh's gaze was steady, unyielding. "Then let them come. I am ready." A sudden clatter echoed from the far hall, the sound of armored boots hastening through marble corridors. The tension broke like a rising tide, swift and dangerous. "Guards!" the intruder snapped, spinning on his heel. But none came, only the cold echo of footsteps fading into darkness. Confusion flashed briefly over his face before it clouded with rage. "You have no idea what forces you defy." The Sheikh's gaze swept the chamber, taking in every gleaming mosaic, every rich tapestry bearing witness to centuries of triumph and treachery. The weight of legacy and blood was heavy, but within it lay the fire of defiance. He stepped toward the intruder, the silk of his thob whispering secrets of power as he closed the distance. "This empire's heart beats with more than gold. It is stronger than your poisoned lies." The maid's fingers tightened on the dagger, a silent vow echoing in the stillness. Suddenly, from a shadowed alcove, a soft chuckle drifted, calm, chilling, and unmistakably familiar. A figure emerged, draped in dark velvet, eyes glinting like shards of obsidian. "You underestimate me," the newcomer said, voice laced with quiet menace. "And that will be your downfall, Sheikh." The room's temperature seemed to drop as the two adversaries regarded one another, the gulf between ruler and usurper charged with history and pain. The maid took a breath, steadying herself against the swirling tides of fate. Her eyes burned with a fierce light, a storm waiting to break. The Sheikh's gaze softened for a heartbeat, flickering with something fragile yet fierce. A connection unspoken between two souls caught in the merciless dance of power and loyalty. Then, as a breeze stirred the heavy curtains, a breathless whisper from the far corridors urged caution. Footsteps, approaching too silently to be found innocent. The Sheikh's senses snapped to alert, a predator's focus sharpening in the dim light. "They come for us," he said, voice hard as desert stone. "They will find nothing but fire." She nodded, stepping beside him, their silhouettes cast long and intertwined against the glowing marble. In that moment, beneath the towering spires and the endless sky, the palace itself seemed to hold its breath. A distant clock began to toll midnight. Beneath layers of deceit and blood, a darker truth stirred, one that would shatter alliances, betray hearts, and change the course of the billionaire Sheikh's kingdom forever. And somewhere deep within the labyrinth of silk and shadow, a secret hand moved the final piece on a board where only one could emerge victorious. The chamber still vibrated with the echo of the intruder's ruthless words, a tempest unleashed beneath the marble arches. The billionaire Sheikh's gaze bore into the regal figure, as if to anchor reality amid the storm of betrayal. His breath, though measured, carried the crackle of imminent war. The silk of his thob whispered secrets of lineage and power, as he closed the distance with a command forged from years of dominance. "You misunderstand the spirit that binds this empire," he said, voice low and unyielding. "No shadow of treason will dim the light of this throne." Beside him, the maid's fingers pressed against the hilt of her hidden dagger, the subtle grip steadying the fire that flickered behind her calm exterior. Her eyes, dark as desert onyx, locked briefly with the Sheikh's, an unspoken pledge threading between them, a pact neither could yet name but both understood. Survival demanded sacrifice. The interloper smiled, but it was a smile laced with venom, a serpent coiled to strike. Sacrifice, yes, but what will you bargain when your closest allies turn into enemies? When your own blood thirsts for your ruin? His voice dropped, venom thickening with each syllable. A sudden chill slicked through the hall, the jasmine-scented air thickening into a suffocating haze. The Sheikh's jaw tightened, eyes hardening like obsidian under the desert sun. Power was a double-edged scimitar. It cut close to the hand that wielded it. "Show yourself," the Sheikh spat, stepping forward so that his figure loomed like a desert storm breaking against the dunes. "If you are the serpent in this garden, I will strike first." The masked smile faltered. A flicker of hesitation passed over the intruder's features as the grand chamber's shadows seemed to lean closer, swallowing sound and light alike. Yet he did not retreat. Instead, his voice softened to a whisper, almost a taunt. "You have not seen the worst. The palace bleeds secrets, and tonight they will drown you." Before the Sheikh could respond, the distant echo of hurried footsteps shattered the charged silence. The air snapped taut as two figures burst through the ornate doors, their arrival like thunder over glass. "Your Grace," the captain of the guards bowed swiftly, voice edged with urgency. "An attempt was made on the Crown Prince's life. The palace is breached." A deadly stillness fell. The maid's gaze darted toward the intruder, searching for a flicker of truth behind his poised cruelty. The Sheikh's heart, usually sealed in impenetrable resolve, skipped in a sudden burst of fear, for his blood, for his legacy. "The traitors act swiftly," the Sheikh murmured, voice a blend of icy determination and dread shadow. "Gather the loyal. Tonight, the Empire's fate hangs on a blade's edge." The captain nodded, signaling guards who vanished like ghosts into the labyrinthine corridors. Yet even as order rallied, a new, unnerving realization dawned. The betrayal was deeper than any blood feud, more tangled than the alliances forged in golden halls. The maid brushed a stray lock of hair from her face, breath steady despite the storm swirling in her chest. "We must uncover who aids these enemies from within. The enemy's hand is closer than we imagine." The Sheikh regarded her, the gleam in her eyes both a beacon and a challenge. Behind her quiet strength lay a fierce intelligence, a resolve born of shadows, and now the fate of his empire. He stepped toward the grand window, the desert moon laying a silver path. Across the endless sands, the night's stillness belied the chaos beneath the surface, a dance of vipers awaiting the strike. His voice dropped to a whisper meant only for her. "Trust is scarce in a palace of whispers, but with you, I glimpse a chance." A silence stretched between them, an unspoken question lingering, fragile as the desert breeze, filled with dangerous hope. Suddenly, a faint sound cut through the hush, the softest scraping, like nails dragged across stone. Both turned sharply, eyes searching the shadowed corners. From the gloom emerged a figure cloaked in midnight, movements fluid and deliberate. A mask obscured the face, but the eyes, cold, sharp, held the promise of ruin. "You tread a slender path, Sheikh." The intruder's voice dripped with menace. "Each step closer to the truth leads you deeper into the abyss." The maid's hand found the dagger's hilt once more, fingers tightening. The Sheikh's silhouette stiffened, a storm of rage and calculation flooding his veins. The masked figure's presence was more than a threat. It was a provocation, a summons to war clandestine and ruthless. "You move with shadows," the Sheikh said slowly, voice steady like the desert winds. "But light will find every crack. Your lies cannot hide forever." A cold laugh escaped the intruder. "Then let the hunt begin." Without warning, the chamber's heavy doors slammed shut, sealing the fate of all within. The air thickened, electric with anticipation and danger, as the game transformed into a deadly duel. The Sheikh advanced, the power of centuries pulsing through him, insignia of a ruler not yet broken. Beside him, the maid mirrored his resolve, her blade a silent promise under layers of silk. In that suspended moment, the palace seemed to breathe beneath the weight of destiny. Its golden spires, witnesses to a war born not of armies, but of secrets. And as the masked figure stepped forward, the faintest glint caught the Sheikh's eye. A blade hidden, a betrayal imminent. The game had reached its darkest hour. And the first strike was delivered before the desert moon could retreat behind gathering clouds. The heavy oak doors of the Hall of Whispers slammed shut, with a finality that echoed like thunder through the marble corridors. The soft, sinister laughter of the cloaked intruder vanished into the darkness, but the weight of his threat lingered in the thickening air. Inside, beneath the towering arches and the glimmering chandeliers, the billionaire sheikh stood unmoved, his silhouette a steadfast bulwark against the rising tide of betrayal that sought to drown him. His dark eyes, usually storms of ice and command, now flickered with a fire born of resolve and something deeper, a trembling hint of vulnerability concealed behind the armor of power. The silk of his thob rustled softly as he turned, facing the maid who had, against all odds, become his unexpected confidant and ally. Her gaze held fast, sharp and steady, the shadows of doubt and danger reflected in its depths. "Tonight changes everything," he said, voice low, but threaded with conviction. "We no longer fight enemies outside, but demons born from within." She nodded, stepping closer, the soft rustle of her linen gown a whisper against the cold stone floor. "The palace is no longer a sanctuary. Secrets crawl like vipers through these halls, and every smile hides a blade." His gaze lingered on her face, tracing the delicate strength etched into her features, the courage of a woman who had long lived in the margins, but now stood at the heart of the storm. For a fleeting moment, the space between master and servant vanished, replaced by an unspoken pact forged in shadows and desperation. "We need allies we can trust," the sheikh said, his voice rough with the strain of command. "But who remains when even the closest are poisoned by ambition?" Her lips pressed into a firm line. "Few, but there is one, the crown prince. His loyalty is not blind, and his heart is unspoiled by the palace's darkness." The mention of his son cast a flicker across the sheikh's grim expression. "Do you trust him?" "More than most," she answered. "But he doesn't yet know the full extent of the venom. His protection will come only when he understands the truth fully." The room seemed to swell with the weight of that confession. The scent of frankincense wove through the air, an ancient balm to soothe restless spirits, yet the tension remained raw, palpable. The vast windows framed a moonlit desert. A sea of shifting sands concealing secrets as treacherous as those inside the palace. A sudden, faint rustle made them both turn sharply. From the shadowed recesses, a slender figure emerged, the captain of the guard, his face tight with urgency. "Your Grace, there is news," he said, bowing deeply but with a spark of restrained alarm. The palace gates were compromised moments ago. Unidentified figures were seen fleeing toward the west wing. Orders have been given to seal all passages. The sheikh's jaw clenched, the lines of his face hardening like chiseled stone. "The danger grows," he murmured, eyes narrowing toward the darkness beyond the grand pillars. The maid's hand brushed a hidden dagger beneath her sleeve. "It's no longer just a game of whispers," she said quietly. "They want us cornered, silenced." Her words could have been carried on the desert wind itself, light yet sharp enough to cut. He walked slowly toward the throne, every measured step echoing like a declaration. "Then we will not wait for their strike. We will bring the fight to them." She met his gaze, a flicker of something tender and fierce igniting between them, an ember glowing in the cold night. And if the betrayal is closer than we fear? His eyes darkened, but there was no retreat in them. Then I will tear down these gilded walls with my own hands to protect what is mine. The candlelight flickered across his resolute face, casting shadows that danced like the ghosts of battles past. Outside, the desert stars glittered cold and distant, indifferent to the human wars waged beneath their gaze. A sudden sound shattered the fragile stillness, a voice barely above a whisper, but dripping with menace. From the shadows stepped a figure cloaked in black velvet, eyes glinting like obsidian knives. The smile that curled their lips was cruel and knowing. "You think you can? Outmaneuver fate, Sheikh," the figure taunted, their voice slithering through the hall like smoke. "But every move you make only tightens the noose. The Empire's true enemies are not those you see, but those you once called family." The Sheikh's eyes locked with theirs, a flash of something fierce, rage mingled with sorrow. "Name yourself," he commanded, his voice a low thunder. The figure's smile deepened, a secret unveiled in the curve of their lips. "I am the reckoning you refuse to face." Before the room could absorb the weight of that declaration, another sound split the air, the sharp click of high heels on marble. A woman appeared at the threshold, tall, regal, her presence commanding as she stepped into the flickering candlelight. Her gown shimmered like liquid night, jeweled necklaces cascading over her shoulders, and her eyes burned with icy intensity. "You play with puppets, but the strings are mine," she declared, voice clear and cutting. "Your fragile alliances crumble beneath my gaze." The maid's hand instinctively moved toward the dagger, but the sheikh raised a hand, a silent command to hold. The two women locked eyes, an unspoken war raging in their silence, one born of privilege and power, the other of resilience and quiet defiance. The sheikh sighed, the weight of centuries heavy upon his shoulders. "Enough games," he said, stepping between them. "What is the price you seek?" The woman's smile flickered, revealing a hint of something darker. Control, revenge, the crown. The air thickened with tension, the grand hall seeming to pulse with anticipation. The desert wind whispered through the open windows, carrying the scent of danger and the promise of blood. Suddenly, footsteps thundered from the corridor outside. A cadre of soldiers flooded in, weapons drawn, eyes scanning every shadow. The sheikh raised a hand. "Hold!" The soldiers froze, uncertain. The woman's gaze flicked between the assembled party, calculating, before she inclined her head in reluctant respect. "This is far from over, Sheikh," she warned, voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "The Empire's fate will soon be decided, not by power or wealth, but by the secrets buried beneath these sands." The maid caught the Sheikh's eye, the silent understanding passing between them, like a spark. The war for the throne was no longer a distant threat. It was here, and it had only just begun. From the depths of the shadows, a whisper rose, soft, chilling, and unstoppable. "I hold the final key." The Sheikh's breath caught, because the secret was not in any document or dagger, but in the heart beating closest to him. And that truth would shatter everything he thought he knew. The grand hall was suffused with a quiet tension, the air heavy but charged, as if the very stones had listened to every whispered betrayal and counted every secret step. The billionaire sheikh stood tall, the weight of his legacy etched into the lines of his face, yet softened by the slow thaw of a man who had learned the meaning of trust in darkness. Beside him, the maid's presence was steady, no longer merely a shadow in the palace, but a fierce light that had guided him through storms unseen. The cloak of night had gathered, but within the walls of his empire, dawn was breaking. "The reckoning begins now," he said quietly, his voice a promise shaped by fire and pain. "No more hiding, no more shadows. We face our enemies, inside and out, and finally claim the peace our people deserve." She met his gaze with unwavering resolve. Together. In those simple words, a new covenant blossomed, fragile, yet unbreakable. The conspirators who had sought to fracture his reign were unmasked swiftly, their names exposed through the threads of loyalty and wit woven by the maid's keen mind. The Grand Vizier, whose smiles had concealed a venomous heart, was among those arrested, taken away beneath the outraged eyes of the court. The Crown Prince, young but unyielding, stepped forward as the true heir of honor and strength, his allegiance no longer shadowed by ignorance, but forged in the flames of truth. His gaze, once uncertain, now shone with the sharp clarity of a future unmarred by deceit. In the days that followed, the palace breathed anew. The jasmine gardens bloomed with a vibrancy that matched the hopeful stirrings within the hearts of its people. The golden spires, reflecting the rising sun, stood as beacons, symbols of resilience and renewal. One morning, as the first light spilled gently across the vast marble floors, the billionaire sheikh found himself standing in the heart of the courtyard. The scent of frankincense mingled with the delicate perfume of blooming roses, weaving a tapestry of serenity over the once tense air. The maid, now longer called by such a name, but by her given one whispered only among those who knew her true worth, approached with a calm grace. Her eyes sparkled not only with the memory of battles fought, but with the promise of a future shared. He took her hand, the roughness of his palms a silent confession of the battles endured, and together they looked toward the horizon. "The empire will rise stronger than ever," he said, his voice low but filled with conviction. She smiled, a softness that echoed the first tender warmth of love blossoming after a long winter. "Not because of power, but because of what we have built: trust, honesty, and heart." Their union, forged not by convenience or obligation, but by a profound understanding and respect, became the new cornerstone of the kingdom. The once distant ruler leaned into vulnerability, allowing love to fill the spaces once occupied by suspicion and isolation. Days turned into weeks, and their story, one of redemption and unyielding hope, spread throughout the emirate, inspiring even the most hardened souls to believe in the possibility of change. At a grand celebration, beneath a sky painted with stars, the sheikh and his beloved stood side by side, surrounded by those who had survived the storm. The music of gratitude and joy soared through the palace halls as laughter replaced whispered fears. In that moment, the past's shadows softened into lessons. The wounds began to heal, and the empire embraced a new era. The treasures of gold and silk remained, but they were no longer the true measure of greatness. Instead, it was the strength of hearts united, the warmth of forgiveness and the courage to rebuild, that now illuminated every corner of the land. As the moon cast its silver glow over the palace, the billionaire sheikh whispered a vow to the woman who had become his equal in every way. No more secrets, no more betrayals, only us together. Her answer was a quiet kiss, sealing a story that had begun in whispers and would now be told forever in light. The desert wind carried the promise of tomorrow, gentle and sure, echoing across the sands like a song of victory. And in that peaceful dawn, an empire was not only saved, but reborn, stronger, wiser, and filled with love's unbreakable power.